Hello and welcome to this episode of the Business Spotlight. Today we are joined by Mary Ellis. Hi there, Mary.
Hello, Mark.
Thank you very much for joining us. So, the Business Spotlight, what is it I hear you say? Well, for those of you joining us for the first time, the Business Spotlight is an opportunity for us to interview local business owners and for you, the audience, to find out a little bit more about them, a bit more about their business. And also, if you're thinking about getting in business or maybe thinking about getting onto that entrepreneurship journey, just a little insight into some of the challenges that we all experience in setting up our own businesses. So, Mary, if you could just kick things off for us by letting the audience know who you are, what you do, and how long you've been doing it for.
Sure thing. So my name's Mary Ellis. I'm the CEO of PheroSyn. We make identical copies of nature's own pheromones. We use them in pest management. And the company was formed in 2020. I've been involved since about 2022.
Fantastic. That's great. Thank you very much for sharing that with us, Mary. So, with regards to what you do, what would you say it is that makes you stand out from other companies out there doing something similar to what you do?
Well, pheromones have been around for quite a number of years, since the 70s, really. But most of them these days are for moth type pheromones. And so obviously there's a lot more pests in the world than just moths. And what we do is we make pheromones for other types of pests so that we can expand the application of pheromones. And they can be used in a variety of different ways. You can use them in mating disruption, where you make the female sex pheromone and you spray this out in plumes and it confuses the males so they can't reproduce, and you're affecting the mating cycle. Or you can use them to attract pests, to traps, and all sorts of different ways. So that's the essence of the business.
Wow, fantastic. That's really interesting. So, it sounds like the business was set up sort of just after the pandemic. So, just give us a little bit of a background story as to sort of the business, how it sort of got established, and just bring us through I don't know, like a whistle-stop tour of where it's come from and where you are now.
Yeah, so the spin-off, the company was spun off from Rothamsted Research, which is, I'm sure many people know, the oldest agricultural research institute in the world. It's got a great history of research in this area. So the company spun off in 2020. It received funding from the SHAPE Climate Change Program, which is a program that I'm a mentor for. And that program produced the ability for the company to hire scientists as the business manager. And over time, I got involved with the company and found out about the work that they were doing and just thought it was absolutely fabulous. It fit with my background. I grew up on a farm and we haven't used pesticides since 1968. So it's really exciting to see somebody actually putting some effort into making a commercial event out of this technology. So I got involved through Rothamsted. We restructured the company a little bit, made it more fundable. And then my job obviously was to bring in some financing, which we've done now. We've hired a number of different people, and we've got some new hires starting fairly soon. So it's a really exciting period of time for us. We're really starting to rapidly grow at the moment.
Wow, sounds like a bit of a whirlwind journey so far then.
Yeah, absolutely. It has been. And we've had some exciting press over the last few months, and we've just announced this week some funding that we've raised from Canada. So we're starting to move more globally as well with some of our products, which is really exciting.
Wow, that's fantastic. Well, I was just about to ask, what are the plans for the future, Mary? I mean, just give us a bit of an insight into what you've got coming up over the next few months or even few years.
Well, I think one thing that we notice is that the market is obviously growing very quickly as people get more interested in more sustainable alternatives to chemical pesticides. They're looking at ways to manage their pests. Not only farmers are looking at better pest management solutions, but also consumers are driving that trend as well. So we actually see that have got the right tailwind behind us, and we're starting to look at plans to bring new products onto the market. So we're expanding our portfolio of products. We are a portfolio-based company. So we have a number of different products for legumes and pears and other types of crops. So in the future, we see ourselves expanding that. Because we do things slightly differently to other companies, we're able, therefore, to compete in the global marketplace where other companies aren't actually active at the moment. So there's a number of critical milestones that we've targeted for the next few years.
Wow. So you're going to go global, basically, yeah?
Well, it's a global issue, isn't it? I mean, the biodiversity loss around the globe is absolutely shocking. And when I think of what's happened in my lifetime with biodiversity is really very, very significant. And I think we need to act. We need to produce products that are relevant globally. This isn't just us. This is a whole movement around sustainable pest management, sustainable ways of farming for the future.
Yeah, wow, powerful stuff, powerful stuff. So Mary, I mean, moving on to yourself then, I mean, what would you say over the period of time that you've been doing this would be the biggest lesson that you've learned in business?
Well, I've spent the last 24 years, I think, working with startups. So I have a tremendous amount of experience in that really early stage of starting a business. And I think one of the best pieces of advice I would give is to ask for help. You know, surround yourself by people that know more than you do. Make sure you've got good advisors and people that you can trust to give you that advice. And that's something that I think when you start a company, you're often hesitant to reach out and ask for help, but really you do need to do that. It is quite a lonely place when you're running a company. And so it's helpful to have a good network of people around you.
Yeah, that's some really, really useful advice. I think an awful lot of business owners I speak to as well, it's having the gall to ask for that help, because a lot of the time when you're doing something and setting up a business, you get to a point where you don't want to ask for that help. So that is some really powerful advice. Thanks for that share, Mary. So humour me, if you will. We're going to go back in time. I know we can't travel back in time, or at least we don't believe we can go back in time. But if we were able to go back in time, Mary, we're going to go back and we're going to visit an 18-year-old Mary. Now, you get to give yourself one piece of advice, one golden nugget. What would it be?
I think it would be to pace yourself. I think there's an awful lot of people I've seen who've taken on an entrepreneurial career, and it's really exciting, and you can dive straight into it, and you can ignore life around you and absorb yourself in your company. And I think if I could have given myself one piece of advice, it would have been just to slow down a little bit. Make sure you take your family with you. Make sure you take your friends with you, and you maintain a reasonable social life, and don't isolate yourself from the world, because that is all too easy to do.
Yeah, that's a really special piece of advice. And I'm loving the fact that you're saying about the journey, take your family with you. I think that's a really powerful share. Yeah.
Yeah, it's important, because if you don't have that network behind you, and if things are falling apart in your family, you're never going to be able to build a business. So yeah, that's a really critical piece of the puzzle for me.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. That's really good. Thanks for that, Mary. So what would you say, what is it that puts that fire in your belly? I mean, you mentioned entrepreneurship journeys and setting up businesses over the last 24 years and working with a lot of startups. So what is it that sort of, puts that passion, that fire in your belly, Mary?
I think it was probably my father, who's no longer with us, but he had such a love for nature, and the birds and the hedgerows and things he really took care of. And he was into organic farming well before it was a trendy thing. And I think he gave me the kind of will and attitude just to go out and try and do what I wanted to do. And I think it's also starting a company and being an entrepreneur and being in that environment. It's fast paced. There's a lot that goes on. It's a little bit addictive in some ways. You really, you get excited, and when you start to learn to celebrate the milestones and things like that, it can be a really, really fun journey. And yeah, I guess there's a little bit of that in me that I'm not getting rid of and haven't really fulfilled throughout all of these years.
Oh, no, that's brilliant. And I love the fact that you've sort of, from a mentoring perspective, I mean, my father also was a huge part of my life, and sadly is no longer with us, but still lives with me on a daily basis. And I think having that sort of mentor of someone that sort of inspired you, but also I can just tell by the tone of your voice and just, the smile on your face when you start talking about entrepreneurship, how much it means to you.
Yeah, it really does. It's been a part of my life. I started my first company right from MBA school, so I'd studied until I was 30, which I loved. I loved to study. But as soon as I started my first company, I just absolutely adored that attitude that people have that in that entrepreneurial environment. It's really, really fun.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. I love that. Thank you for that share, Mary. So, I mean, lastly then, just to wrap things up, what's the best way for people to get hold of you and sort of, maybe contact you? I'm sure they'd like to find out more. And also, is there any sort of like anything that you've got coming up that you could share with our audience today as well?
Yeah, the best way to reach us is probably either through LinkedIn. We're all on LinkedIn, or our website, which is www.pherosyn.com. It's the easiest way to reach out to us. In terms of things that are coming up, we're hiring people, so we're always interested in anyone who is local and wants to get involved in the company. So we're hiring for a project manager at the moment, which is really exciting. But if people have a genuine interest in the industry, in nature-based farming, then we definitely want to hear with them and connect with them, even if it's just to share the odd piece of news every now and again.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for that. It's been fantastic having you on the podcast today, Mary. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Mark, for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Brilliant. And for our audience out there, thank you very much for joining us today. Mary's just explained, if you'd like to get in touch, the ways to do that. We'll also put it underneath in the links below as well. So thanks very much. And that's another wrap for the episode of the Business Spotlight. See you all again soon. Bye for now.